It was a crisp October evening in Washington, D.C. The grand auditorium at the Kennedy Political Forum buzzed with energy as reporters, political pundits, students, and voters from across the country filled the rows. Tonight's debate wasn't just another talking head panel. It was being touted as the showdown of the year, a live, televised economic debate between President Donald J. Trump, running for re-election in 2028, and Senator Robert Whitaker, a fiery Democrat from New York known for his sharp tongue, Harvard-etched intellect, and relentless criticism of the Trump administration. The lights dimmed. A booming voice echoed. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2028 Kennedy Economic Forum debate. Please welcome your moderator, Christina Blake from the National Public News." Christina walked onto the stage, smiled at the camera, and motioned toward the wings. "Please welcome our two guests tonight, President Donald J. Trump and Senator Robert Whitaker." Trump emerged in a dark blue suit and red tie, a familiar confident smile on his face, waving to the crowd. The applause was thunderous but mixed with murmurs and jeers. Right behind him, Senator Whitaker stepped out, tall, silver-haired, dressed impeccably in a gray suit. He smiled not at the crowd but directly at Trump. For the next 30 minutes, the debate followed the expected script. Infrastructure, job reports, trade policy. The moderator tried to keep things on course, but it was clear both men were waiting for the fireworks. Then it came. Christina Blake turned towards Senator Whitaker. "Senator, earlier this year, you called the president's economic policies a fraud dressed in red hats. Would you care to elaborate?" The senator grinned. "With pleasure, Christina," he said, then turned directly to Trump. "Mr. President, you've spent the last 8 years inflating numbers and slapping slogans on chaos. You've declared victory on a battlefield of illusions. Yes, the stock market is up for the rich. Yes, unemployment is down if you work 3 jobs just to pay rent. But here's the truth, the middle class is evaporating. National debt is ballooning. And you've turned the American dream into a rental agreement with China." The crowd stirred. Whitaker wasn't done. "You've claimed to be the best job creator since Abraham Lincoln, but let's be honest, the only job you've secured is your own. The Trump economy isn't an engine of growth, it's a reality show with tax breaks for billionaires and breadcrumbs for everyone else." The room was buzzing. Even Christina Blake looked stunned. All eyes turned to Trump. He didn't flinch. He adjusted his mic, leaned forward, and smiled. "I love it when a career politician reads off a cue card written by an angry intern," Trump began. "But let me explain something real to you, Senator." He paused, letting the moment breathe. "I didn't inherit power from a party machine or sit in a Senate chair writing angry letters for 20 years. I built things. Real things. And when I took office twice now, America was bleeding jobs, hope, and respect. And guess what? We stopped the bleeding. We rebuilt. We renegotiated bad trade deals, brought back manufacturers, pushed energy independence, and yes, we raised wages." He stood up slowly. "You say the middle class is vanishing? Then come with me tomorrow morning to Ohio. Or Michigan, or the shipyards of South Carolina. You'll meet people who got their jobs back, who bought their first homes, who stopped needing food stamps because they now have paychecks they can be proud of." The crowd was silent now. Even the senator didn't interrupt. Trump turned fully to him. "You stand here in a $1,000 suit criticizing capitalism, the very system that allowed you to rise. But I don't speak for Wall Street. I speak for the plumber, the farmer, the small-town teacher. You mock my economy? That's fine. But what you're really mocking is them." There was a stunned pause. Then a thunderous, spontaneous applause. It grew louder wave after wave. Some stood. Even Christina Blake leaned back in shock. Senator Whitaker's smile had faded. And for the first time, his carefully crafted confidence cracked just a little. Senator Robert Whitaker, usually poised like a surgeon with words, blinked twice and tightened his grip on the podium. He had come in expecting to corner the president with data to expose what he called economic pageantry, but Trump's retort, calm, direct, and surprisingly grounded in anecdotes, had landed harder than he expected. The auditorium, once dominated by split reactions, now tilted palpably in Trump's favor. The crowd wasn't just clapping, they were nodding. Christina Blake stepped in, trying to restore balance. "Senator Whitaker, would you like to respond?" He cleared his throat and tried to smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. President, anecdotes aren't policy. One success story in Youngstown doesn't erase the 40 million Americans struggling with medical debt or families living paycheck to paycheck. The economy you describe works if you're already inside the gates." Trump raised an eyebrow but remained silent, arms folded, letting the senator continue. You speak of building things, Whitaker added, voice rising. But where was that spirit during the housing affordability crisis? The tech sector layoffs? The climate jobs that never came because you deregulated every environmental standard we had left? He paused for effect. You say the middle class loves your policies. Then why are union leaders across the country endorsing my campaign? There was a smattering of applause. A few cheers. Trump finally picked up his mic again. His tone had shifted, not defensive, not aggressive. Just firm. Senator, union leaders might love your campaign, he said. But union workers, the men and women sweating through 12-hour shifts, they come to my rallies. That got a bigger cheer. He stepped toward the audience, waving his hand as if painting a picture. Look, I don't pretend America is perfect. But let's talk real numbers, not just slogans. Under my administration, median household income rose for the first time in a decade. Black and Hispanic unemployment hit record lows. We passed the American Manufacturing Act, which brought over 400,000 jobs back from overseas. Gas prices dropped. Food prices stabilized. And despite the doomsday forecasts, our economy rebounded faster than Europe's, China's, and almost every major country post-pandemic. Senator Whitaker interrupted. But at what cost? You slashed taxes for corporations, deregulated banks, and increased the national debt by trillions. Trump didn't miss a beat. You know what increases national debt more than anything? Spending money on committees that don't produce results. Sending aid overseas while our veterans sleep in parking lots. Funding studies on shrimp on treadmills while our own kids graduate without basic financial literacy. The audience erupted. Even Christina looked momentarily caught off guard. Trump continued, voice steady. Yes, I cut corporate taxes because corporations provide jobs. And guess what? They reinvested. They hired. They expanded. Trickle-down didn't just trickle, it flowed. You want to talk about debt? Let's talk about your Green Sky Initiative. $2 trillion. No roadmap, no accountability, and zero bipartisan support. Whitaker's face was flushed now. Clean energy is our future. And I agree, Trump interjected. Which is why we backed the Fusion Innovation Act. We just didn't name it after ourselves. There was laughter, real, genuine laughter, even from neutral members of the press seated in the gallery. The tide had shifted. The man many expected to falter in a wonkish economic debate had not only held his ground, but flipped the momentum. Then Trump, sensing the moment, delivered the knockout blow of the round. You know what the difference is, Senator? You think the American people need saving. I think they need unleashing. A hush fell. He let the silence hold for a moment, then added. They don't need more programs, more taxes, or more lectures from Washington elites. They just need the government to get out of their way. The applause was deafening. This time, no one held back. Whitaker stood stiffly. He tried to smile again, but the confidence of earlier had drained. His attacks hadn't failed, but they hadn't inspired. Trump, on the other hand, hadn't just responded. He had connected. As the cameras panned across the auditorium, the energy was undeniable. Viewers at home, in bars, and in living rooms across America were texting, tweeting, and talking, "Did you see that Trump comeback?" Even major networks, which had long been critical of the president, were reluctantly acknowledging the moment. Trump had landed a solid punch. But Senator Robert Whitaker wasn't finished. He was a seasoned debater known for his resilience. With a subtle nod to Christina Blake, he signaled his turn to reclaim the momentum. "I'll give you credit, Mr. President," he said, voice calmer but edged with intensity. "You know how to tell a story. You turn stats into symbols and slogans into belief. But behind the show, behind the fireworks, there's still the truth. And here it is, the Trump economy looks great until you scratch the surface." He walked a few steps downstage, defying traditional debate rules, locking eyes with the audience. "Let's talk about student debt," he continued. Still over $1.7 trillion. Healthcare? Americans are still rationing insulin while billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies are partying in Palm Beach. Housing? The average home is out of reach for an entire generation. You say you unleashed the people. But for many, you just unleashed the wolves, landlords, lenders, and loophole-loving billionaires. He turned back toward Trump. You say you rebuilt America. Maybe. But who owns the new America you built? For a moment, there was a pause, quiet, thoughtful. It was a good line. And it hit home with some. Trump stepped back up to the mic slowly, calm as ever. I love that line, who owns America? He repeated, nodding. Let me tell you something, under my presidency, for the first time in decades, the answer isn't just Wall Street. It's Main Street. He pointed toward the crowd. It's the Latina who opened her second bakery in Arizona thanks to deregulated business loans. It's the black father in Detroit who finally got a manufacturing job paying union-level wages. It's the immigrant family in Texas who started a home renovation business because they weren't being buried in compliance paperwork. Then, with a commanding tone, you know what the difference is, Senator? You see America's flaws and you say, the government needs to fix that. I see America's strength and say, let the people fix it. Let them build. Let them rise. Whitaker shook his head. What you call strength, Mr. President, is just survival. Americans are scraping by. You didn't solve anything. You just stepped out of the way and called it policy. Trump didn't flinch. You're right. I stepped out of the way, he said. I stepped out so that a record number of small businesses could step in, so that innovation could breathe, so that opportunity zones could give forgotten neighborhoods a second chance. He leaned forward again, voice quieter but more intense. You call it scraping by, but I've met those Americans. I've shaken their hands, and I'll tell you something, they're not scraping. They're fighting. They're growing. They're winning. At that, someone in the audience, a veteran wearing a faded Trump 2024 cap, stood and started clapping. Others joined. It wasn't coordinated. It was real. Whitaker, seeing the shift, decided to go nuclear. One last question, Mr. President, he said. If your economy is so incredible, why are Americans still feeling so insecure? Why are so many still afraid of losing it all over a single hospital bill, a job layoff, or a market crash? Trump took a beat, then spoke softer than before. Because we've built an economy where government doesn't cushion every fall. It gives you the tools to stand up again. Then came the line, one that would trend, one that would be replayed 100 times before morning. Senator Whitaker, you want to make Americans safe. I want to make them strong. And I believe a strong America doesn't live in fear, it rises every time. The moderator tried to cut in, but the moment had already taken over. Christina Blake, still gripping the moderator's desk, finally stepped in to cool the fire. Gentlemen, she said, her voice firm, let's turn our focus to the future. Americans are watching tonight not just to relive economic history, but to understand what comes next. She turned towards Senator Whitaker. Senator, what is your economic plan for the next 4 years? Whitaker, collecting himself, adjusted his tie and leaned forward with authority. My plan is simple, he began. Level the playing field. Close tax loopholes for billionaires. Cancel student debt for working families. Invest in green infrastructure which will create over 10 million jobs. Cap insulin prices. Expand Medicare. And unlike this president, I will do it without cutting social safety nets. Polite applause followed. His base appreciated the clarity. The script was strong. Familiar. Safe. Then Christina turned toward President Trump. Mr. President, same question. What is your economic vision for the next 4 years? Trump straightened his jacket and walked a few paces, not behind the podium now but out on the stage itself, like he was talking directly to America. My vision, he said slowly, is to double down on what works and fix what doesn't. He looked to the audience. We're going to make small business loans even more accessible. We're going to reduce capital gains taxes for startup investors so innovation doesn't die in dorm rooms. We're going to open new trade routes that favor American exports, not foreign bureaucrats. And yes, we'll rebuild the energy sector, including clean energy, but without killing jobs in the heartland. He paused. And above all, we're going to make America the best place on earth to start a business, buy a home, and raise a family. More applause. Stronger now? Whitaker jumped in, trying to regain ground. Mr. President, those are promises, not policy. You've been in office, what's stopping you? Trump turned to him, finally dropping the measured tone and leaning into raw confidence. You know what stopped us the first 3 years? Your party, he shot back. Endless investigations. Lawsuits. Gridlock. But despite that, we lowered taxes, deregulated industries, and still had the fastest post-pandemic economic recovery in the world. He pointed toward Whitaker's podium. Your plan? Spend trillions. Raise taxes. Regulate everything that moves. That's not economics, that's control. Whitaker opened his mouth to respond, but Trump wasn't finished. And let me tell you something, he said, voice rising now. Americans are tired of being talked down to. They're tired of being told they need Washington to save them. The American worker doesn't need pity, they need power. And that's what I've given them. A thunderous cheer erupted. Even some undecided voters in the front rows stood. Then, as the moment crested, Trump delivered the line that would go viral by morning, a line that would appear on t-shirts, memes, and campaign banners within hours. You mocked my economy, Senator. But that economy built millions of second chances. For veterans. For ex-offenders. For families who were one paycheck from disaster. Then, turning to the camera, to America. I didn't give them handouts. I gave them hope with a paycheck. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we build a future. Silence. Then claps. Then a wave of cheers. The kind that drowns out everything. Senator Whitaker stood there, blinking composed, but clearly cornered. For the first time all night, he didn't have a quick retort. Christina Blake looked between them, trying to move the debate forward. But it was clear, the debate had already ended in the minds of many. The debate was officially over, but the moment, the seismic shift that Donald Trump had engineered on live television was still rippling through the hall like an electric charge. The moderators thanked the candidates, but their voices were drowned out by the murmur of voices, the rush of commentators backstage, and the unmistakable roar of a nation reacting in real time. Outside the debate hall, cameras caught everything, the stunned silence on Senator Whitaker's face, the crowd swarming to get closer to the president, and the hashtags already trending across every social platform. Hashtag hope with a paycheck. Hashtag second chances economy. Hashtag Trump mic drop. News anchors across the spectrum, even some historically critical of Trump, couldn't deny what they'd just seen. On CNN, Anderson Cole turned to his panel and said, whether you love him or hate him, Trump just owned that stage. Whitaker had the facts. Trump had the fire. On Fox, Tucker Masters chuckled. Senator Whitaker brought spreadsheets. Trump brought sledgehammers. Even on independent podcasts and TikTok reels, younger audiences were reacting to Trump's final speech not necessarily because they were Trump supporters, but because his message had something rare, clarity and conviction. Backstage, Senator Whitaker was pacing. He hit below the belt, he muttered to his aides. He oversimplified everything. He spun anecdotes like fairy tales. One aide nodded sympathetically. Another, younger staffer hesitated before saying, "But it worked, sir." Meanwhile, President Trump was leaning back in a chair, sipping a Diet Coke, scrolling through reactions on his Truth Social feed. "Look at this," he said, grinning. "They're already putting the quote on shirts." An advisor walked in. "Mr. President, News Nation wants a reaction interview." Trump shrugged. "Let them wait. America just heard what it needed." But even Trump, veteran of 1,000 showdowns, took a moment for quiet reflection. He looked out the green room window at the crowd still buzzing outside the venue. Then he turned to an aide and asked, "You think they got it? The real point?" "What do you mean, sir?" Trump set the soda down. "I wasn't trying to win a debate. I was trying to remind people why they fought so hard to win back their dignity. Why they took second jobs. Why they started new businesses. Why they left failing cities and built new lives in the heartland. I wanted them to remember it wasn't me who made the economy great. It was them. I just got Washington out of the way." The room was quiet. For a rare second, even his staff didn't speak. Across America, TV shows broke into segments. Fact-checking the debate, replaying key quotes, interviewing undecided voters. But the key moment, that moment, played again and again. "You mocked my economy, Senator. But that economy built millions of second chances. I didn't give them handouts. I gave them hope with a paycheck." The next morning, newspapers carried split headlines. Trump dominates debate with defiant economic defense. Whitaker presses on inequality, struggles to land final blow. But the people, the voters, they were still talking about the comeback, about the fire. About how a president who had been mocked, doubted, and challenged had turned a live debate into something more, a reconnection with the American dream. Senator Whitaker continued on the campaign trail, delivering thoughtful, reasoned policy speeches. But the energy? It had shifted. Trump, meanwhile, leaned into the moment. His rallies grew bigger. His message got sharper. And that one quote? It became his campaign's central slogan, not just words, but a reminder. That in his eyes, the American economy wasn't about graphs or Federal Reserves. It was about the waitress in Des Moines who started a catering business, the trucker in Ohio who paid off his mortgage, the single mother in Florida who bought her first home, And for all of them, he repeated the line one last time at his next rally. They say I gave them nothing, but I gave them something priceless. Hope, with a paycheck. And the crowd roared like thunder.